And I've seen it before where a lone police officer, one police officer, at night pulls a car over and he's talking to the driver, and all of a sudden somebody pops out of the darkness who's filming. And the police officer pulls one of these. Excuse me, who are you?
Now, this just in, police officers in Lancaster, Pennsylvania were asking people to be on the lookout for a man who robbed a store. And I think we do have his description. Can we take that? Let's take his description.
I become so numb, I can't feel you there. Become so
Okay.
So Arizona is trying to do something about these First Amendment frauditors. Pick your First Amendment frauditor of your choice and keep him in your mind while you watch this.
Welcome once again to Leto's Law. Here's Steve Leto.
Had a whole bunch of people send me this story in the last 24 hours. Bob, Brian, Suze, and Frederick among them. Court strikes down limits on filming of police in Arizona from the Associated Press. And this is a hot topic. And we all know there have been instances of things the police have done that were filmed by people nearby. And with the ubiquity of smartphones, of course, the ability to film something is now something that's in pretty much everybody's hands. So if I see something happening, I can film it. You can film it. Someone else can film it. So it's getting to the point now where pretty much anything that happens in public very well could be filmed, possibly by more than one person. And so there are, as you can imagine, people out there who don't want to get filmed if they're doing something inappropriate. And of course, the argument could be made. It could be made that sometimes people who are watching something happen will get involved. And the question is, can you pass a law that says that someone can't film you while you're doing your job in public? And that's where this runs afoul of, I don't know, the First Amendment maybe?
Or is it possibly people trying to hide behind the First Amendment to do things that are foul? They wouldn't normally be allowed to do, but they're saying, I have a camera, so I can do it. Remember, cameras don't grant extra rights. Got to put this on a t-shirt or a coffee mug.
So, court strikes down limits on filming of police in Arizona. A federal judge has ruled that an Arizona law limiting how close people can get to the law enforcement to record them, that's unconstitutional, citing infringement against the clearly established rights to film the police doing their jobs. Now, the ruling from a U.S. District Judge permanently blocks enforcement of the law, and he had already suspended the law last year. And so what happened was this law got passed and says you have to stay more than 8 feet back from a police officer if you're going to film them. 8 feet. Just 8 feet. Not 9, not 6, 8. Not 7. Not 7.5. 8. 8 feet. 8 feet at least, okay? And so some people might ask, why 8? Why 8? And so the weird part about this is that when they first brought this to the court's attention, the court said, just glancing at it, appears to be unconstitutional. Didn't strike it down permanently, but said, look, I'm going to give you guys, that is the parties here, an opportunity to get your acts together, brief this, do the research, and come into court and explain to me your position on this. Fascinatingly, the state could not find many people who wanted to step into court and say, yes, I will stand up for this and I'll argue that there's a rational basis for this. So the law was signed by former Republican Governor Doug Ducey in July of 2022, but enthusiasm for the law faded and legislators refused the opportunity to defend the law during the initial court suspension. A state senator who sponsored the measure said he was unable to find an outside group who would defend the legislation. So a lot of times when a law gets passed like this, there'll be different parties on both sides that step in and go, well, we'll defend it, we'll explain why. So one might have thought, if you just said, Steve, pick somebody, who out there might be willing to step into court and say, yes, we think this is a good law. Oh, I don't know. Aren't there organizations that represent the police? And yet they couldn't find one of them to step up and do this. So it looks like pretty much everybody knew this one was dead on arrival. But The law made it illegal to knowingly film the police 8 feet or closer if the officer tells the person to stop. So you were allowed to film the police, and then if the officer said stop, you had to stop.
Oh, you mean kind of like Poster 7 says you can film in the post office until somebody asks you to stop? Yeah, that doesn't work there either.
The law prohibits or chills a substantial amount of First Amendment protected activity and is unnecessary to prevent interference with police officers given other Arizona laws in effect, the judge ruled. A coalition of media groups and the ACLU had successfully sued to block the law. Prominent law enforcement officials refused to defend it, including Republican former Attorney General Mark Brnovich and both the prosecutor and the sheriff's office in Maricopa County. So none of them stepped up. Bystander cell phone videos are largely credited with revealing police misconduct, such as the George Floyd case, and reshaping the conversation around police transparency. But Republican Arizona lawmakers initially said the legislation was needed to limit people with cameras who deliberately impede officers.
Oh my God, that didn't record. See, the camera's not the issue. The fact that they're holding a camera claiming I can break this other law because the First Amendment says you can't stop me from filming myself do it. I'm standing with a camera means I can stand 2 feet from you because I have a camera and the camera's allowed 2 feet from you. The problem is the camera does not grant you extra out. Something bit me. The camera doesn't grant you extra rights. If you claim you have extra rights because of a First Amendment activity, you should be charged with abusing the First Amendment or abusing the Constitution, because you're not allowed to be there without the camera. You're not allowed to be there with the camera. Plain and simple. And if you have a camera while you're doing something that you're not supposed to, it should be an enhancement. But it has to be very carefully worded.
So we'll get to that last sentence in a second. The Associated Press, who wrote this story, filed a friend of the court brief urging the judge to block the law from being enforced. The AP's attorneys said that photographers especially could be caught up while covering rallies where it could limit their ability to capture the full interactions between police and protesters. I've seen situations where there's a march someplace, and there's police officers and there's marchers. And at one time or another, the groups come together, and the police and the marchers are within literally touching distance of each other. And I've seen it before where someone turns and films that, and they are within arm's reach. They're not interfering. They're within arm's reach, though, which is within 8 feet. And so that would cause problems there. But it says here, lawmakers initially said the legislation was needed to limit people with cameras who deliberately impede officers. What causes this law to fail is the phrase "with cameras." There are laws on the books that say you cannot go up to police officers who are doing their jobs, and you cannot interfere with them while they're doing their jobs. So as soon as you say you can't do this with a camera, wait, I can do it without a camera though? So all you have to do is look at that and go, why does having a camera make it any different? And then you understand, oh, it actually doesn't make it any different with respect to what's happening. So let's go to some hypotheticals here, okay? And this is important. I'm not saying this is what happens. I'm saying let's look at hypotheticals, because people always get upset with my hypotheticals. So a hypothetical means let's suppose these things happened with certain sets of facts just to see how the law might work, okay? So you're a police officer, and you come upon a crime scene, and there's a victim of a crime standing there, and so you walk up to the victim of the crime and start questioning the crime victim as to what happened. I see this, it's happening in public. I think this is an interesting newsworthy event that I should film and put up on my channel. So I start filming it, and I'm 20 feet away. And as I'm filming it, I go, I could frame this better if I got closer. So I get closer, and at one point I step between the police officer and the crime victim. I start filming the cop, and the crime victim is now behind me. Most people would say, gee, Steve, at that point, you're interfering with that police officer doing his job. Maybe you should step back. Maybe I should, but here's the thing. It has nothing to do with the camera. It has to do with me. I have inserted myself into that situation, and I am interfering with the officer's ability to do his or her job. So obviously, that's a problem, and there should be a law saying I cannot interfere with the police officer. And by the way, there is such a law. But it's not the camera that has anything to do with it, or a microphone. That's not it. It's just that I'm interfering. So back that transaction up to where I'm 5 feet away or 10 feet away, whatever the distance might be, and I'm standing there with no camera. If that's legal, then why would the addition of the camera make it illegal? And that's the problem, and that's why this will always fail when they say we're going to have a law that prohibits your ability to film the police. And so if they are genuinely concerned about the police trying to do their jobs and people coming in and interfering, well, you look at it that way. Whether someone's got a phone in their hands or not cannot be the question. It's simply, is their presence there causing problems? I have seen, by the way, I'm not making this up, I've watched probably hundreds, if not thousands of traffic stops on YouTube because I go down these rabbit holes of police chases and police interactions at the side of the road. And I've seen it before where a lone police officer, one police officer at night pulls a car over and he's talking to the driver, and all of a sudden somebody pops out of the darkness who's filming. And the police officer pulls one of these. Excuse me, who are you? And now remember, there's a person in a car right here. Now there's a person right here. And I've seen it before. A police officer says, excuse me, I can't have you standing over here out of my line of sight or behind me. Can you please go stand on the sidewalk? And I've seen it before. The person goes, no, because then I can't film what you're doing. And now I'm not saying that with those facts and nothing more, that this person here is breaking the law. But I understand the concern a police officer has where he's trying to do his or her job, speaking to a motorist, driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, that kind of thing. And suddenly somebody walks up behind them in the darkness. That, to me, would be a safety concern for the officer. And the officer would want to be able to see in one field of vision this person and this person. And I don't have a problem with that. But again, it has nothing to do with the camera. It's not, oh, you can stand there if you put the camera down. It's, no, where you're standing is the problem. And that makes sense to me. So this is always difficult because it's situational, meaning that it's not the distance. It's not somebody who's 8 feet, 1 inch away from you is no longer a threat to you. But at 7 feet, 11 inches, they're a threat to you. No, they just picked an arbitrary distance. And by the way, so if you assume that most people, their wingspan, tip to tip, is roughly how tall they are. Okay, so I'm 6'2". Right now, you cannot see both my fingertips at both ends there, but that's about 6 feet 2 inches. Okay, so if I'm reaching forward like this, I'm guessing the camera is a little over 3 feet away because there's this distance here. So that's a little over 3 feet away. So 8 feet away would have us far enough apart to where if I reached out to you and you reached out to me, we probably couldn't touch our fingers together. And so that might be where they got the 8 feet from. I don't know. But the problem with the law is that if they say you must stand so far away from a police officer doing his job, that's one thing. But if you say you must stand so far away from a police officer doing his job while you have a camera, is always going to fail. Because if I can legally stand here without a camera, I can legally stand here with a camera. And I'm talking about in a public place watching the police do what the police do. Okay? So the law got struck down. The court had originally said it's probably going to get struck down because facially it appears to be problematic. Then when asked to get people to come into court to defend it, they couldn't find anybody to stand up and defend it. So that's a problem. But again, it was also passed by a governor who's no longer in office. I suspect if the governor was in office, they probably could have scared up somebody to come in and come in and defend this in court. So in Arizona right now, that law is no more. So court strikes down limits on filming of police in Arizona from the Associated Press. Bob, Brian, Suze, and Frederick all sent it. Thank you very much. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Leto's Law. A psychologist is someone who watches everyone else when a beautiful person enters the room.
I don't want peace. I want problems.
To put it all in perspective for everyone, ladies and gentlemen, Paul Harvey.
Policeman. A policeman is a composite of what all men are, I guess, a mingling of saint and sinner, dust and deity. Culled statistics, wave the fan over stinkers, underscore instances of dishonesty and brutality because they are news. What that really means is that they are exceptional, they are unusual, they are not commonplace. Buried under the froth is the fact. And the fact is that less than 0.5% of policemen misfit that uniform. And that is a better average than you'd find among clergymen. What is a policeman? He of all men is at once the most needed and the most wanted. A strangely nameless creature who is sir to his face and pig or worse behind his back. He must be such a diplomat that he can settle differences between individuals so that each will think he won, but if a policeman is neat, he's conceited. If he's careless, he's a bum. If he's pleasant, he's a flirt. If he's not, he's a grouch. He must make instant decisions which would require months for a lawyer, but if he hurries, he's careless. If he's deliberate, he's lazy. He must be first to an accident, infallible with a diagnosis. He must be able to start breathing, stop bleeding, tie splints, and above all, be sure the victim goes home without a limp or expect to be sued. The police officer must know every gun, draw on the run, and hit where it doesn't hurt. He must be able to whip two men twice his size and half his age without damaging his uniform and without being brutal. If you hit him, he's a coward. If he hits you, he's a bully. A policeman must know everything and not tell. He must know where all of the sin is and not partake. The policeman from a single human hair must be able to describe the crime, the weapon, the criminal, and tell you where the criminal is hiding. But if he catches the criminal, he's lucky. If he doesn't, he's a dunce. If he gets promoted, he has political pull. If he doesn't, he's a dullard. The policeman must chase bum leads to a dead end, stake out 10 nights to tag one witness who saw it happen but refuses to remember. He runs files and writes reports until his eyes ache to build a case against some felon who will get dealed out by a shameless Seamus or an honorable who isn't honorable. The policeman must be a minister, a social worker, a diplomat, a tough guy, and a gentleman. And of course, he'll have to be a genius because he'll have to feed a family on a policeman's salary.
Come down today and try some corn, or we will sacrifice your newborn.
You what?
So I'm not going to ask whether you enjoyed that video, but I do hope you found it interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.
Oh yeah, positivity, yeah.
Dude, get the lights out of my eyes. That thing is powerful. Point it at the ground if you want to see me. Point it at the ground.